Hi friends, very good morning to all of you. Okay friends, in this session we are going to discuss some of the editorials that have appeared in the examination. So in this session I am going to discuss two important editorials. One is lessons from the first wave. Friends, this talks about the the first wave of COVID-19 vaccine in 2020, and we were in complete lockdown for almost 3 months, and we have learned some valuable lessons from there in terms of health measures and as well as how to deal with the social situations, also what to do with the migrants, whether they should be allowed to migrate or not, and what should we do with the industry and other sectors. So we have learned some valuable lessons here in this article. The author feels that as we are witnessing the second wave, what in what way we can make we can take good measures that the weaker sections of the society will not be get hurt more, as there is a view that the disadvantaged sections suffered more during the previous breakout of the COVID-19. Friends, the second article is about multipolar world, and this multipolar world is going to be scripted by the middle powers like India, Japan, Turkey, and Iran. And these countries will make sure that there will be no Cold War or new Cold War in the world order. Right, friends, we will go and see each article in some detail. Right, friends, the first one is about lessons from the first wave. Friends, the author talks about, if we introduce even the partial lockdowns again, this will widen economic and social inequalities. So the author feels that when the first lockdown was imposed, it widened the economic as well as the social inequalities. So if we are going to impose even the partial lockdowns, this situation is going to aggravate further. Right, friends, India's second COVID-19 wave is more virulent than first wave, and even youngsters are being affected with this new variant. Right, friends, many states have restarted enforcing shutdowns on various scales, and large-scale political, social, religious events are still being held, and this is an unfortunate development, rendering the restrictions meaningless. Right, friends, uneven growth when lockdowns were imposed in the previous time, the growth was uneven, the recovery was uneven. Friends, our overall economic trajectory had been on the upswing after the disastrous economic collapse at the onset of the pandemic. So we know very well that India, even in the G20 groupings, India recorded the worst growth rates for the first quarter that has occurred after the COVID-19 outbreak. Right, friends? International Monetary Fund (IMF), it projected India's GDP to grow at 12.5% this year. So for this financial year, the IMF predicted that our growth rate would be 12.5%. The problem is with the growth rate, friends, the growth is hardly going to be inclusive, because some sections are definitely going to be left out from this growth story or growth process. Right, friends, many sectors including technological, pharmaceutical, and healthcare sectors, they have recorded high levels of growth, and the wealth of our billionaires increased by 35% even during the COVID-19 time. So the billionaires recorded their business recorded, the wealth increased by 35%. Friends, there is a flip side to this high growth rates and profit makings. The sectors including travel and tourism and wellness and hospitality, that form the bedrock of the economy's recorded historic lows. So the bedrock of the economic, the sectors that form the bedrock of economy, they have registered historic low growth rates. Friends, the pandemic decimated the informal and the MSME sector and pushed 75 million Indians into poverty. So because of the COVID-19 pandemic, almost 75 million people have been pushed back below the poverty line. Right, friends, now we will see the growth recovery, how the economy has recovered from the first wave of the COVID-19. Right, friends, even before the second wave, before this one, after the first wave, the economists were of the view that India's revival from the COVID-19 induced downturn would be a K-shaped one. It will be a good recovery. It will be a sharp increase in the GDP growth rate. But the problem with this growth rate is only a segment of our population recovers from the downturn or negative growth rates. So this is the problem with the recovery of our growth rate. Right, friends, the COVID-19 has affected the least affluent the most. So the bottom of the pyramid, those people have been worst hit by the pandemic. Friends, introducing even partial lockdowns again will constrain the movement of the goods and laborers. So if we are going to impose lockdowns, even they are in the nature of partial, it is going to hit the movements of goods and as well as the laborers. Friends, this will significantly bring down our industrial productivity and create avenues that will widen our economic and social inequalities. So this will be the problem. The partial, even if we are imposing partial lockdowns, it will arrest the industrial productivity, and as a result, the social and economic inequalities are going to rise. So friends, what we can do, how we can overcome the situation, or what is the alternative for imposing a lockdown? Right, friends, the alternatives could be interconnected industries should be aggregated and allowed to function as at the maximum possible capacity, even in multiple shifts. So we can increase the shifts, and interconnected industries could be aggregated and they can be allowed at the maximum possible capacity. Right, friends, we can impose stringent health and safety regulations, and they have to be implemented. They have to be implemented with the strict, as far as possible. They have to be implemented strict. Right, friends, non-essential gatherings should be restricted or banned. So the non-essential gatherings, like for festivals and other groupings, they can be banned. Right, friends, preventing the distress. Demand contraction has been the biggest contributor towards the economic downturn during the pandemic. So major problem during the pandemic was reduction in demand. People were not going out and buying. So this was the major problem. Friends, the government will have to account for this and urgently ensure cash stimulus packages at both individual and institutional levels. So the government has to take responsibility for this, and it should induce the demand by giving cash stimulus. These can be in the form of direct cash transfers to the people, and as well as it should ensure some stimulus for the institutional level also. Right, friends, this will boost consumption and investments. So when people start consuming, the demand for goods will rise and the industry will start investing again and production will pick up. Right, friends, extra emphasis will have to be given to industries most affected by the pandemic. Those are, as we have seen, the travel and tourism industry and hospitality and wellness industries. Friends, additional allocations will have to be made for job stamps, direct cash transfer, and employment guarantee schemes. So these sectors the government should be allocating. For these sectors, the government should be allocating more funds. Right, friends? Reports from many states indicating that new COVID-19 mutations are unforgiving even for the younger population. So even the younger are at a greater risk with the new mutant. So India will have to accelerate vaccination production, procurement and distribution. So we have to accelerate vaccine production, procurement and distribution. Friends, if possible, vaccination should be opened for all age groups. So for if we have to vaccinate all the people irrespective of age, we need to produce vaccines at larger scale than we are producing right now. Right, friends, if we can do this it will make easier for the majority of our labor to be at their workplaces with fewer risk. Right, friends, students will also be able to attend classes and examinations and participate in skilling programs without further breaks. So friends, as you all know, there are some news that the universities are being affected because of the physical classes they have started. So if we are vaccinating each and everybody, so the students can also go to colleges, schools and colleges, take examinations, and they can also participate in the skilling programs. Right, friends, to conclude, since the onset of the pandemic, our health workers and policymakers have had enough time to be familiar with the virus. So they have learned something and they are now familiar with the wherewithal about the COVID-19 vaccine. Friends, and they can design effective treatment and safety protocols. And the private sector and NGOs played a big role in rapidly scaling up healthcare infrastructure during the first wave. So the private sector as well as the NGOs have played a big role and they have provided infrastructure for the health sector also. Right, friends, with political will and public participation, we should now be able to save lives without compromising on our population livelihood or without letting many more fall behind through inadequate safety nets. So if we are creating appropriate safety nets and we are taking care of everybody by implementing the measures suggested above, so we can comfortably overcome the second wave also. So friends, this is what the author feels, and we have learned valuable lessons during the first wave. So by being careful and by implementing proper measures including appropriate social safety nets, we can comfortably overcome the second wave also. Right, friends, this is all about this article, and now we will see the second one. This is about the multipolar world and how the middle powers are going to make it a reality. Right, friends, a multipolarity scripted by the middle powers. Friends, Japan, Iran, Turkey and India are well set to shape the emerging world order. This is what the author feels. Friends, it is clear that US continues to view China as its principal adversary on the world stage. So along with Russia, US is viewing China as its principal adversary. Friends, it will have the Quad to challenge China in the Indo-Pacific, possibly as part of a new Cold War. So the US will use Quad group to challenge China in the Indo-Pacific arena. Friends, this Cold War the author is talking about, this was given concrete shape during the Trump presidency when the ravages of the pandemic made the president and his officials demonize China. So the emergence of COVID-19 gave the US a chance to point a finger at China and accuse it and start a new Cold War by demonizing China. Right, friends, the US hostility for Russia, it goes back to the Russia's war with Ukraine and Russia's annexation of Crimea, and also the allegations of Russian interference in the 2016 US presidential elections. So the rivalry has been raging since then. Right, friends, what is the result of this entire scenario? The result is US animosity has encouraged China and Russia to solidify their relations. So because of this common enmity with the USA, Russia and China are coming together now. Right, friends, they have not only expanded their relations in a significant way, they have agreed to harmonize their visions under the Eurasian Economic Union. So they are harmonizing their visions under the Eurasian Economic Union, sponsored by Russia, and as well as the Belt and Road Initiative of China. Friends, the idea has now been subsumed under the Greater Eurasian Partnership, to which both are committed. So now they are talking about Greater Eurasian Partnership. Right, friends? Significantly, especially for India, both Russia and China have condemned Quad for undermining global strategic stability. So they have condemned the Quad grouping. Right, friends? Then, so because of all these developments, the new Cold War is now being reflected in the new geopolitical binary. That is the Indo-Pacific. It is represented by the Quad, and Eurasia, it is represented by the Russia and China. So it seems there is a geopolitical binary in the world at present. Right, friends, the middle powers the author is talking about, these the final shape of this divide, that is Indo-Pacific and Eurasia, it will be determined by four nations. Those are Japan, India, Iran and Turkey. Right, friends, these as middle powers have the capacity to project power regionally, build alliances, and support the strategies of international powers pursuing their interests in the region. So these middle powers have the capacity to change this binary relationship, or the so-called binary geopolitical binary in the world order. Right, friends, these four powers and their alignments are already in place. If we observe it carefully, friends, Japan and India, they are deeply entrenched in the Quad and have substantial security ties with United States of America. So both these countries are, it seems that they are aligned with each other in Quad and also with US. Friends, Iran on the other hand has long been an outcast in Western eyes and has found strategic comfort with the Sino-Russian alliance. So it is finding some rapport and comfort with the Russia and as well as China. Friends, Turkey, it is a NATO member. It has found its interest better served by Russia and China rather than the US and its European allies. So Turkey is also taking a lot of comfort with China and Russia instead of its Western allies or the European partners. Right, friends, despite this allure, the allure is for these four countries to join in some kind of grouping, either with China or Russia or with the USA. The four nations are not yet prepared to join immutable alliances. So these are not ready to join these so-called alliances. Friends, they are reluctant allies. They are definite for allies with these countries, either with Russia, China or with USA, but they are reluctant allies. Why so? We will examine now. So if we see the case of Japan, Japan has ongoing territorial dispute with China relating to the Senkaku or Diaoyu Islands in East China Sea, and it has a security treaty of 1951 with the US, and it has been crucial for Japan's interests. So 1951 treaty is very, very important for Japan, and the US is also very important for it because of this. Right, friends? But there is more to Sino-Japanese relations. Those are, if we see in 2019, 24% of Japanese imports came from China, while 19% of its exports went to China. So in terms of trade, it is very much connected with China. So what is the bottom line? The bottom line is, in terms of security, the Japan depends much more on USA, and in terms of trade, it depends much more on China for its prosperity. So because of this, Japan cannot join a tight regional or geopolitical grouping. Right, friends? If we see the case of India, India's ties with China have been caught up in a vicious circle. So we know all the reasons, because of China is trying to surround India from all directions, and there is a border clash at the LAC, and as threats from China at the border, and intrusions into South Asian neighborhood, and the Indian Ocean become sharper, it moved closer to the US. So because of these incidents it faced with China, it is moving closer towards the USA. Friends, India is expanding defense ties with US from 2016, consisting of massive defense purchases and agreements on interoperability and intelligence sharing and frequent military exercises. So the defense ties also at the positive gear, and they are India is closing very much close to USA in defense ties also. Right, friends? Also, the elevation of Quad to ministerial level in September 2019, it signaled to China that India was now irreversibly in the US camp. Right, friends? With the border standoff at Ladakh, China is perhaps reminding India that its security interest demand close engagement with China rather than a deepening alignment with global rival. So what China is trying to say with its intrusions at the border is, India needs to ally with China more, not with USA. Possibly this could be the message that is China is giving to India. So this is what the author feels. Right, friends? If we see the case of Iran, the crippling sanctions on Iran and the frequent threats of regime change make it natural ally of Sino-Russian axis. So Iran becomes a natural ally of Sino-Russian axis because of the sanctions imposed by USA. Right, friends? However, its strategic culture eschews long-term security alignments. So the good relations with China and Russia are not enough for Iran. It has to make new security alignments. Right, friends? This will surely assert itself after sanctions are ensured. So Iran will assert itself after sanctions are lifted, whenever they are lifted, and the Iran will seek to redefine its strategic space and exercise independent options. So Iran will be looking forward to find its strategic space and exercise independent options. Right, friends? We will see the Turkey, the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He is trying to showcase a neo-Ottoman spirit. How he is trying to do that? By a steady distancing from its Western partners and increasing geopolitical, military, and economic alignment with Russia and China. So he is trying for a neo-Ottomanism or neo-Ottoman spirit. Right, friends? But Turkey still wishes to keep its ties with the US intact and retain the freedom to make choices. So still it does not want to break its relationship with the US or with NATO and it wants its relationships should be intact with the USA, and it wants its freedom to be retained and to make free choices. Right, friends? It's a new Asia initiative, for instance, involves strengthening of East-West logistical and economic connectivity backed by Western powers and as well as China. So for its a new Asia initiative, it requires support of both centers, that is Western powers and as well as China. Right, friends, if we see the defining characteristic of these relationships and about these four countries, the four middle powers whose choice of alignment will impart a political and a military binary to the world order are reluctant to make this a reality. So because of the choices these four countries are making, the option of a binary world, it is becoming impossible. Right, friends? The Cold War advocates in home capitals and in the US will continue to promote ever tighter alliances. So the US and other powers in the world, they will try to make the tighter alliances a reality. But these nations could find salvation in strategic autonomy defined by flexible partnerships with the freedom to shape alliances to suit specific interests at different times. Friends, these four middle powers will thus make multipolarity rather than a new Cold War the defining characteristic of the emerging global order. So because of the nature of external policy followed by these countries, the nature of relationships they have with other countries, so the world will move towards a multipolar world and not towards a binary or not towards a new Cold War. So this is made possible by these four middle powers. Right, friends, this is all about from this article, and this is all for today. Thank you for joining me. See you next time. Have a good day.